Hello everyone, welcome back to ELC-Studies. I am here with another amazing topic from History of English Literature. Today we will cover the later part of Romantic period which we have discussed in the last two videos, and we are gonna talk about the Romantic prose writers in this lecture video. Though the Romantic period specialized in poetry, there also appeared a few prose writers like Lamb, Hazlitt, and De Quincey who rank very high. There was no revolt of the prose writers against the 18th century comparable to that of the poets, but a change had taken place in the prose style also. What was that change? In this period, the writers of the Romantic period were rather more concerned with the subject matter and emotional expression than with appropriate style. There was also an indication of growing distrust of the sharp distinction between matter and manner, which was made in the 18th century, and of a romantic preference for spontaneity rather than formality and contrivance. And though some romantic poets like Coleridge, Shelley, Keats, Byron wrote excellent prose in their critical writings, letters and generals, and some of the novelists like Scott and Jane Austen were master of prose style. Those who wrote prose for its own sake in the form of essays and attained excellence in the art of prose writing were Lamb, Hazlitt, and De Quincey. Let's discuss these notable prose writers. The number one is Charles Lamb, 1775 to 1834. Charles Lamb is one of the most lovable personalities in English literature. He lived a very humble, honest, and most self sacrificing life. He never married but devoted himself to the care of his sister Mary, 10 years his senior, who was subject to mental fits. In his essays of Elia and last essays, in which he revealed his own personality, he talks intimately to the readers about himself, his quaint whims, and his experiences, and the cheerful and heroic struggles which he made against misfortunes. Unlike Wordsworth, who was interested in natural surroundings and shunned society, Lamb, who was born and lived in the midst of London street, was deeply interested in the city crowd, its pleasures and occupations, its endless comedies and tragedies, and in his essays he interpreted with great insight and human sympathy that crowded human life joys and sorrows. He writes always in a gentle, humorous way about the sentiments and trifles of every day. The sentimental, smiling figure of Elia in his essays is only a cloak with which Lamb hides himself from the world. The style of Lamb is described as quaint because it has the strangeness which we associate with something old fashioned, because he was a lover of old fashioned things. Because of his abilities and qualities, he is called as a prince among English essayists. Our next writer is William Hazlitt. As a personality, Hazlitt was just the opposite of Lamb. He was a man of violent temper with strong likes and dislikes. And his judgment of others' temper was always downright and frank and never cared for its effect on them. During the time when England was engaged in bitter struggle against Napoleon, Hazlitt worshipped him as a hero, and so he became in conflict with the government. His friends left him one by one on account of his aggressive nature, and at the time of his death, only Lamb stood by him. Hazlitt wrote many volumes of essays, of which the most effective is The Spirit of Age, 1825, in which he gives critical portraits of a number of his famous contemporaries. This was a work which only Hazlitt could undertake because he was outspoken and fearless in the expression of his opinions. The style of Hazlitt has force, brightness, and individuality. As he had read widely and his mind was filled with great store of learning, his writings are interspersed with sentences and phrases from other writers, and there are also echoes of their style. Above all, it vibrates with the vitality and force of his personality, and so never lapses into dullness. The last writer we are going to discuss is Thomas De Quincey, 1785 to 1859. De Quincey is famous as a writer of impassioned prose. He shared the reaction of his day against the severe classicism of 18th century, preferring rather the ordinate manner of Jeremy Taylor, Sir Thomas Browne, and their contemporaries. The speciality of his style consists in describing incidents of purely personal interest in language suited to their magnitude as they appear in the eyes of the writer. In fact, his prose works are more imaginative and melodious than many poetical works. There is revealed in them the beauty of English language. The defects of his style are that he digresses too much and often stops in the midst of the fine paragraph to talk about some trivial thing by way of jest. But in spite of these defects, his prose is still among the few supreme examples of style in the English language. De Quincey was a highly intellectual writer and his interests were very wide. Mostly, he wrote in the form of articles for journals and dealt with all sorts of subjects about himself and his friends, life in general, art, literature, philosophy, and religion. Of his autobiographical sketches, the best known is his Confession of an English Opium Eater, in which he has given us, in a most interesting manner, glimpses of his own life under the influence of opium. He wrote fine biographies of a number of classical, historical, and literary personages, of which the most ambitious attempt is the Sirards. In all his writings, De Quincey asserts his personal point of view, and as he is a man of strong prejudice, likes and dislikes, he often gives undue emphasis on certain points. The result is that we cannot rely on his judgment entirely, but there is no doubt that his approach is always original and brilliant, which straightway captures the attention of the reader. Moreover, the splendor of his poetic prose, which is elaborate and sonorous in its effects, casts its own special spell. The result is that De Quincey is still one of the most fascinating prose writers of England. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't subscribed our channel yet, please subscribe so that we come up with an upgraded and emerging versions of videos.